What's up, brother? It's your boy, Mike Muse. Welcome to the Conversation on Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be in conversation again with my next guest. I say it again. This is his first time on the Mike Muse Show, but he and I met at the 9th Annual Careers in Film Summit that I co-founded with the Oscars with my founder in crime, Bettina Fisher. And what we do there, audience, I think you all know, but for those who may need a refresher, we bring about traditionally anywhere from 700 to 1,000 students from South Central Los Angeles to the Academy to learn so much about the art of filmmaking. You know, we, for so long, particularly back in brown communities, we always think about being an actor, which is fantastic, and we should, but there's so many incredible careers that you can have below the line. And that was always our focus. And part of the below the line is music and music composition and scoring and soundtracking, which all the things we love and personally that I love. And so this year for the 9th Annual, I had the chance to be in conversation with Jongnic Bontemps, and I'm sure I butchered it, but he's going to correct me in just one second. And he and I had the most incredible conversation. And I was like, bro, anytime you're in New York City, you have to come by the Mike Muse Show, and he is here. So what is happening, my friend?
Hey, man, I was in New York, and I had to come to your show. So thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you did. And I didn't get the name right.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
But work with me and help me and my audience.
It's all right. It's my mother's fault. It is Jongnic Bontemps.
Jongnic Bontemps.
Yes.
Jongnic Bontemps.
You got it.
My audience knows that words matter.
They do.
Names matter.
I appreciate
and
that.
so, I don't know if I was telling you this, but audience, this is a fun fact about me too with names. Jongnic, I don't know if we were discussing this, but when I was in high school, I was a junior and I had to read the names for all the seniors in my city, district-wide, who were getting a certain kind of an award. And so I'll never forget my vice principal, Principal Brown, she came up to me and she said, do you know how to pronounce all of these names? And I say, I don't, because it was district-wide, right. And we had various demographic population, and we had a heavy Vietnamese population in Lansing, Michigan at the time.
Ooh, okay.
And so I said, no. And so what she did was she contacted every school and asked them to get the phonetic spelling for me.
Oh, nice.
And we practiced probably about twice a week for about an hour to 2 hours and really working on the names. And when I got to the banquet, at the end, do you know the parents came up to me and thanked me for getting their name right?
Right.
And it said how much it mattered to them.
It mattered, yeah.
And ever since then, I've been very cognizant of getting the names of people right. And there's nothing more infuriating when I feel like people go to graduation and they work so hard getting these PhDs and they write these dissertations with 100 words as part of the dissertation, right. And the big moment, and then the announcer just butchers the word, right? And I'm like, their whole family is here.
Right,
you could have put a little bit of effort into making sure it's right. So that is a very long version of why names really matter. When I don't get it right, I'm also apologetic, and I want to keep practicing.
I appreciate it, though. Let's be the first of many, I hope.
Yeah. And audience, his voice is a little bit hoarse right now because he's been running his mouth.
Dude.
And the reason why he's been running his mouth and screaming to the top of his lungs is because the reason why he is here is because he scored Transformers Rise of the Beast, and they are #1 in the box office, clocking in over $170 million
worldwide.
What is happening, my friend? That's enough to be screaming.
And I screamed, and you can tell the result.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's been a wild ride. I was here last week in Brooklyn for the premiere.
Yeah.
We premiered in Brooklyn.
I was there too. I missed you at the King's Theater.
That's right.
I should have texted you that I was there.
Oh, and it was such a wild ride. The energy in the audience was so amazing. And to actually have a film that was set in Brooklyn with people like me that have Brooklyn, in their hearts meant so much.
I can only imagine, because you're born and raised in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And you lived in Brooklyn for some time after college, right?
That's
he went to Yale before he went to LA. So what actually was that moment? Had you gone to King's Theater as a kid?
No, I had never been to King's Theater as a kid.
Okay.
No, we were more sort of Eastern Parkway side of things, so we didn't go to that side of town per se, but I'd never been there as a kid.
Audience, for those who are not familiar with New York City style living, it is very territorial. The 4-block radius is real in New York City.
So true.
No matter where you live, you can live in East Village, West Village, Harlem, Bronx, Queens. You do not travel far outside that 4-block radius. So that is perspective for you.
That's right. Thank you for giving the perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't really grow up with King's Theater. I mean, we drove by it every now and then, but that was about it. But just to see the energy of the New York people, for them to appreciate the Brooklyn setting, they were such energy at the jokes and the drama. It was really special.
I've been telling people that this film gave me old school filmmaking.
Oh.
And What I mean by that is I got to be honest, bro. And I know I'm talking to somebody within the film industry, in the film world, so you're not going to like what I say. But I prefer now, because of the pandemic, watching movies at home.
True.
I enjoy getting the screener to Vans or watching something on Netflix, ordering takeout, Uber Eats, DoorDash, having my own wine or my bar set up, having friends over. And I enjoy that moment. And it takes a really special film for me to want to leave my house to go see it. And I go begrudgingly every single time. I'm like, we can just watch this at home.
Right, exactly.
But going to see Transformers, man, I am so thankful I didn't wait until it came to me. I went to go see it. And it felt like, I don't know if you ever watched movies in the Times Square Theater, the AMC on 42nd Street.
Yes, I have.
That experience at the premiere gave me that energy.
That's right.
And I think it added to the film.
It's a communal experience, right? People are yelling at the screen. You're laughing with the entire audience. So there's an energy that you get when you sit down with 100 strangers. Yeah. And in our case, it was
more.
Like 2,000
strangers.
2,000 strangers, and you're all taking this experience together. There's nothing like it. And I'm really happy that we're coming back to theaters and people will be able to enjoy and have that experience. I
am too. So I've been telling everybody, and so audience, if you have not seen Transformers, what are you waiting for? But I do encourage you to go see it with a group of friends. Literally, this is a friend movie.
It is.
Right? It could be a date night, obviously, but it's definitely if you can go with a bunch of people.
Right.
Like a bunch of the fellas, your homies, your girlfriends, your family, however the schematics is, I encourage you to go see it with people, because the person I brought with me to the premiere, she and I just kept bumping into each other like, yo, right? And we started dancing in the seats. And so it was like a big old party.
It was.
With that, man, I want to get to the party because music, before I get to the music, you broke records. You were actually the first Black composer, if I'm not mistaken, to compose a budget of that size.
That's correct, yes. So I believe I've did some research about this, and so far I have not found another, but I believe I am the first African-American Black composer to write the music for a blockbuster film of this budget. Wow. So that's pretty amazing. And also, I believe to have the #1 film in the world.
Yeah, that is insane. I'm cracking up because I am a band geek, y'all.
Oh, no.
So I get this. Like, I play the alto sax. I was also a jazz band. It's different, obviously, from the orchestral music, but just in the sense of being like that band geek, right? And when I was playing my instrument, I was a drum major too. A little bit of flex for me. First Black drum major in my high school. A little accolade for myself.
There you go.
I just never could have imagined a career post high school,
right?
And really making music, in particular, like if you're not a singer. Right, I didn't think instrumentalists made money like that.
They don't.
And then, right, but then all of a sudden, then to be able to score a film that came in #1 at the box office to $170 million, like you are representing all the band geeks and nerds out there right now, bro.
Well, one of the big things I'm trying to do right now is let people know that this is a career. When I was growing up, I had no idea that this even existed as a possibility. Maybe my life would have been different. But, when I graduated from Yale with a degree in music, because I love music my entire, growing up years, I had no idea how to make any money with it. So I got into software, and I did software for 15 years. I did Silicon Alley. And I built sites like Fresh Direct.
No way!
I actually wrote the original website for Fresh Direct.
Shut up!
Kid you not? I know, New Yorker right there. You know
that is epic.
Right.
For those who may not be familiar, like Fresh Direct is like, how do I describe it for other people out there? It's like Instacart.
It's like Instacart.
Yes. Basically, get your groceries delivered to you.
Correct.
And living in New York with walk-ups and buildings, that is so clutch for us right now.
And we were there before Instacart, there before Amazon Fresh. You would go on and order your porterhouse steak, how you want to cut.
I love that.
And it would be custom butchered for you, sent to you. So I actually wrote the little interface that did the porterhouse steaks for you.
Well, since we're here, and since you can flex a little bit longer, a little bit more. You actually sold this product to HP.
That's right. So at some point, I ended up going to Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And I was an early member of a startup, and that product that we had, which is called Fortify Software, did software security, was bought by HP.
Okay.
And I ended up basically having a worldwide development group and a product line, right, at HP.
So now you're just getting annoying. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, all this greatness is really getting annoying right now. Like, you're taking excellence a little too far, bro.
Oh, sorry, man.
Thank God I'm secure itself to handle all this. I'm like, not only do you have a band geek and a nerd, goes from the #1 box office in the world, over $170 million, to at this time.
That's right.
also, too, you were doing exit strategy and getting acquired with startups before getting acquired. Exit strategies was such popular part of our lexicon right now.
It is. Well, and we were doing this back in like 2000, I guess it was like 8, 9. So this was like way back. But
you're so annoying right now. I just want to say that.
I'm just trying my best, man. Just trying my best.
Keep flexing on it. This is so good, audience. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am, because what I'm just smiling about is that this is what representation matters in telling stories, right? This is a unique pathway, right? I never get into the music and all that, but this is just such a fun conversation for me, because you are a reminder and a representation of what is possible, right?
Well, let me just add to that a little bit, because even though I was doing software and I was doing well, I had a lot of runway, I wanted to be like a major black CTO in Silicon Valley, I wasn't 100% happy. Something was missing. And one night, God came to me, I really believe it was God spoke to me and said, if you trust me, you will give up the vision of your life and I will replace it with something else. Now, when you have a career, you have a certain amount of momentum. You've built certain things, you have a certain trajectory, you're supposed to be doing something with your life, right? God's like, give it all up. It took a little while, but that phrase never left me. And eventually I began to let it go. What he brought back was music.
Wow.
And I slowly started writing, slowly started playing. A friend of mine listened to something that I wrote, and she said, that sounds like film music.
Wow.
And it had never occurred to me that that was a career.
Is it because you had given up on music leaving Yale?
Well, it's because I had no idea how to make any money. As a kid growing up, I had amazing teachers, but my mom made sure I had private teachers the whole time. And I saw how hard it was to make money with music. Most of them, very talented people, but were living home with their moms. That was not the life that I wanted. So music was just going to be a hobby, and I was going to keep it moving and do something else. So when I got out of Yale, I figured out to get into software, computer programming, and that was it.
That's another flex quietly. You've done 2 stunts. I've been letting you get away with it. The first one, audience, is a key word. He said runway. To have a runway in the startup world is absolutely amazing, and it's rare. And people usually have to close up shop because they don't have enough runway. What that means is they don't have enough capital to sustain paying the rent, paying their employees, paying for other business expenses, right? And so that's called the runway. So the fact that he had extended runway and still exit on his own is something to be said. The other thing to be said, so you are talking to an industrial engineer who did chemical research. So someone who is just all of a sudden comes out and just learns computer science. No one just casually learns computer science. I just want to just note that. I'm loving your flexes right now.
Well, I wasn't trying to.
Keep going. This is good.
One of the things that I realized, and I think we shared this at the Academy, is when I wanted to make this transition into film music, I realized that in life, it's not about who you know, but who knows you. And I made sure that when I wanted to go to USC, I went down there, met with the director of the program, met with the professors, so they could know who I was. So when my application came in to start over, they would actually have more than just a name on a piece of paper.
I love another flex. So not only does he just apply to only the #1 film school and gets in, right? NYU would argue that they're the #1 film school.
NYU turned me down.
Are you serious?
I kid you not. I went and visited.
Well, I'm glad you got humbled at some point.
I did get humbled. They were like,
humility just exudes. Y'all, USC is so hard to get into. So congratulations, man.
But again, I just realized that they had to know who I was because I didn't have the background of a typical student going there. I didn't have the compositional degree coming out of some sort of major program. So I was like, well, they're going to have to know my story, know my passion, and that this is really what I believe I need to be doing.
Well, now, I mean, it was so funny. Can I be honest with you? I was just talking to Davian before you walked in. If I can let you into a little bit of a secret here, a little bit of vulnerability. I was just like, I don't know what I was supposed to talk to Jongnic about today.
What?
And I knew you and I. Am I lying? No. I literally said that. When I met him, we had such an amazing conversation about music composition. I said, but for some reason, I don't feel like that's the conversation.
Oh, wow.
And then here you come, and we haven't even touched music composition yet.
That's true.
Because I also, too, with my audience, no matter who sits in the seat, I always feel like there's a story that's relatable for the audience. Not everybody wants to be an actor, a politician, a business person, right? Or a music composition or someone who scores for films. But I'm always wondering, what is the lesson that can be transferable?
Right.
And what I'm hearing is just an unbelievable bet on self.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I think the bet on self has to be in the purpose of being happy. You know, the true currency in life is happiness. And I thought that happiness was what the American dream sold our parents. My father came from Haiti. My mother came from Jamaica. They met in Brooklyn. Classic story, right? And they believed the American dream was buy a house, have a car, have a family. And they were happy with that. And they had jobs that were fine, but they were happy with the fact that they achieved the American dream. So that gets transferred now to us in my generation, which is happiness is by having a house and having the stability. I had that. I was in software. I was doing well. I had a house, you know, in a community, gated community, and I felt so on the top of a hill. And I felt
in San Francisco.
No, it was actually in Monterey.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
Excuse me, why? I should have say bye, my friend.
It was in Monterey.
That's
and
awesome.
I felt like I've arrived.
Yeah.
I can't get any higher than this. This is amazing. I have everything my parents ever dreamed that I should have, but I still wasn't happy. And God's like, we're not done with you yet. We're going to replace this because what you need to be is happy. Mm-hmm. And the happiness came from just doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this world, which is basically writing music.
Okay, let me ask you this. How did you, because clearly you were doing well, there was some semblance of happiness. What was the distinction for you of, it sounds like there might have been a distinction between happiness and fulfillment.
Okay, fair enough. We were comfortable and we had what we needed, so to speak, in life. And I guess we were happy. But you're right, I didn't feel fulfilled.
Because there's a lot of people out there who are walking not feeling fulfilled.
Yes.
Right?
And so there was a hole that you're trying to fill up with other things. And usually it's with, you know, material things, possessions, relationships, whatever it is, career. You're trying to fill that hole with something because you don't feel fulfilled.
There's so many people walking around who are listening to us or just walking around, people I talk to so often who just don't feel fulfilled. Because now what we're getting to now is the art of the pivot, right? But then we also need to get to the point of being still enough to hear God, right?
That's
so
right.
How did you, I'm always curious when people say they heard this voice or they heard something, like how did that come to you, right? How did this burning desire come to you to leave comfortability to seek fulfillment in the unknown?
Well,
I know
okay.
faith, but
There's faith.
if you can.
But I'll sorry, we're going to get into a little personal stuff too, because at the time, and when this all sort of went down, I was also very unhappy with my family. And I was trying to get a divorce from my wife. I had my wife, who I met when I was 11 years old. Wow. We met when we were 11. And, you know, we dated all throughout high school and college. We were married at 24. So we got married pretty young. And I guess this is around like, you know, I was maybe 10 years into our marriage. And I felt that my marriage was holding me back from what I needed to do. Because I wanted to be, you know, again, a Silicon Valley CTO. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to be a technological evangelist, right? And my wife didn't sign up for that. She's like, I signed up for you to be my husband and be the father of our kids. So that was in direct conflict with what I wanted in life, or what I thought I wanted in life. So I was willing to destroy all of that to go after this dream of who I thought I should be. So I was living on one side of the house and my wife was living on the other side of the house because, you know, I wasn't going to leave because I love my boys, who at the time I guess were like 8 and 4 or something like that. So I didn't want to leave because that would be a whole issue with custodies and all this kind of stuff. So we were living on the opposite sides of the house. And that means I was alone and I was just listening and I was just thinking about, what am I doing here? And I just started praying that night. I said, Lord, you know, what is going on here? Bless me, even though I know I'm being a complete jerk. And part of what I learned, it's not about speaking and prayer. It's about listening and being quiet. So at that moment, I got super quiet and just tried to close everything out. And that's when those words came into my mind. If you trust me, why don't you trust me with the vision of your life?
That is so powerful right there. I just wanted to let that sit still for a quick second, because it's all clicking to me, and like I think why you're here. Like this is a continuation of a story. The interview that we did with Kirk Franklin, his wife Tammy Franklin.
Oh, okay.
And so they came in here probably a couple of weeks ago, and I really leaned into them about partnership and the importance of partnership and the understanding of partnership, and how sometimes we look at marriage as like this fairy tale, or like this Love and Basketball or The Best Man, and shout out to Malcolm Lee, which I was in, but that's often not the case, right? And sometimes about all being a partner and supporting each other, right? And this is a great use case, right? Of and not getting into personal or critiquing personal,
no, it's fine,
but about when it's just not working and then the goals are not aligned.
But it wasn't even that, Mike. I mean, quite honestly, I wasn't working.
That's what I'm saying. However it works out, there's no critique of anybody, but it's about like when things are not aligned anymore, right? When things aren't aligned, the partnership kind of needs to dissolve, right? But sometimes a lot of us stick into partnerships that need to be dissolved, but we don't dissolve it for whatever reason. We don't take time to sit still. We don't take time to seek answers, God's prayers, whatever you subscribe to, right? We never take that time to be still, because it's like, how can I bust up all these things?
Correct. We're on a mission on what we think we need to do. And, what God did was allowed me to see that I wasn't fulfilled because I wasn't doing the thing that he put me on this planet to do. Ooh. And part of it was understanding that I'm responsible for my happiness. I was putting my agency of happiness into too many other people, into a career or a boss or a company or even my marriage. If none of these things made me happy, I wanted to dissolve them. And God's like, no, you're responsible for your happiness. So you need to figure out what's going to make you happy. And at that point, it was scary because I couldn't blame anybody else. But music started coming back, and music made me happy. And again, God's pretty amazing in that he's not going to sort of show you the whole thing right away, because you're like, that's never going to happen. But in bits and pieces, his desire for my life unfolded. Started playing in church just a little bit. And I was never, good enough to be like the first pianist. I was like maybe the second or third string pianist, right? And then started playing around with a thing called GarageBand.
$170 million later.
Yeah. But I knew that, being a musician, it was not the thing for me. Yeah. And then when I found film scoring, I was like, that is the thing for me. And that made me so happy. Because at the end of the day, look, when you start this career over, I was, doing well. But I started interning at a local music production house after I would work. So I'd work in Silicon Valley. I'd go up to San Francisco in the evening, and I was the guy setting up the chairs for the event. Or I was the guy at the checkboard, with the checkboard, taking the garbage out, doing whatever intern stuff you needed so I could be part of the community. So there was actually a humbling, right? Starting over, learning that had to go through part of this. But every step of the way, I was actually happy.
Audience, you can't see me smiling, but the reason why I'm smiling, and the reason I keep saying it's all clicking, I say the same thing. I say that I was interning at one point. And so I've had many pivots. So that's why I'm familiar with the art of the pivot and how I'm recognizing your story, going from industrial engineering to chemical research, or my own record label, pivoting into politics, and then now I'm pivoting into media. But in each pivot, there came moments. And so the moment I interned was I was high in life, knee deep with President Obama at the time, ambassador to his Marvelous Cupid program, appointed United States Small Business Administration, working on a particular federal commission, like with him consistently, took my whole family every year to the White House Christmas party, took my mom, just all these really big moments of history. Not only was I making as being the youngest raised $1 million for a sitting president at the time, right? So I was making history, helping to create history and being a part of history. But then all of a sudden I got this call to start doing media and really working at ABC. And to make a very long story short, not to make this about me, because I want to keep going with you, but I just want to let the audience know what interning means as well. So here I am, an ambassador, yada, yada, but I was really getting on the subway, the one train to head uptown to 66th Street in summer, sweating in a suit with other garment bags. I had no stylist, right? just to intern essentially at ABC just for a quick 2-minute hit.
That's right.
To turn around and do it all over again every single day because I kind of like this. Right. And I want the opportunity. So here we are now, 2 shows now on SiriusXM, and with Good Morning America, GMA3, GMA Weekend, ABC News Live, now full-time multi-year contract. Right.
Exactly.
The art of the pivot.
Yes.
Right. And humbling yourself to be an intern. Right.
That's true.
At a much older age.
Oh, yes. By that point,
I'm not 18 anymore.
You're not 18 anymore. I'm definitely not 18 anymore. We look 18.
Yeah,
though.
definitely. Shout out to Keels.
Shea butter, baby. Shea
Exactly.
butter.
Come on, water. But Arnie, that's why I wanted to just lean a little bit more into underscore that intern. I think that's such a pivotal moment for you at your church and a pianist and working at GarageBand.
No, working at GarageBand, which was all amazing, but it also then allowed me to meet more people. And I don't know why. Again, I can't explain it, but people would then start pouring into me. So interning at this place, I meet a guy, and we just start talking about video games. I knew who this guy was. I love video games. He loved video games. We were chatting about some stuff and some music and some games. And then he reveals that he is the head of game music at Sony PlayStation.
Oh my God.
And he says, I love your story. Come have lunch with me the next day. Why? How does this happen? How does this happen? So I go to the Sony PlayStation campus in San Mateo and have lunch with him. And I play him some of the music I've been working on. And he's like, it's not great, but it's not bad. But you're making certain choices that are interesting. So he said, if you want to really do this, let's figure out how you can make a change, because nobody that's doing these big games or big movies is going to hire you as an executive out of Silicon Valley. You've got to start over, tabula rasa. And the way you need to start over is to go to USC, because most of the composers that we actually hire to do our games went through that program. So we know what that training is. And as Mike, you said earlier, that was the #1 film scoring program in the world. So I'm like, how the heck am I going to get into this program? And this is where, again, from business, understanding about people having to see who you are and know your spirit. Because when I was in software, I never applied for a job. People just brought me with them to various companies. And they were like, I'm doing something over here. Come on, JB, with me. I'm doing something over here. I'm going to create a position for you, because they knew who I was. And it wasn't necessarily even about the skills or the talent. It was more about the spirit and like the joy that I try and bring to, and the love to people around me as well. So I never had to look for a job. And you know what happens when you go from one company to another company, your salary just doubles sometimes, right? So I would fast trajectory. So I just had the same principle there. They have to know who I am. Went down to USC, met with the director. The director gave me an assignment. He said, we just had a composer named Teddy Shapiro come in and do an assignment with our students. It was a clip from The Devil Wears Prada, where that clip where Meryl Streep is coming into the office and everybody's going crazy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So the students had to rescore that.
Is that when she's throwing the jackets off of the desk?
He's throwing the jackets off the desk.
Yeah,
and then people are sort of like scrambling trying to like make the place perfect, for her as she's coming up the elevator. So he said, I want you to take this home and score it. Now, I hadn't done a lot of scoring at that point in time. I just did little clips, and I was obviously very nervous about this. But I say, I'm walking in faith. I took it home, and I spent about a week on this little 3-minute scene, and I sent it back to him. And then I went back to USC to meet with him. I didn't just like send it in the issue. I said, I'm going to come back and meet with you. And we met, and he said, you know what? It's not bad, but it's not great. But the fact that you did it says a lot about your will and your character. Because I've done this before, where I've gotten people like you who want to make a pivot and a change. I give them an assignment, and I never hear from them again. But you not only did it, and it wasn't horrible, but you actually came back and met with me again. So let's keep talking. Second thing I did was I found one of the professors there, and I said, will you give me private lessons? So I would fly down from Northern California to Southern California twice a month to take private lessons with the late Jack Smalley. And at the end of my 6 months with him, or 9 months or whatever, I actually had a portfolio that didn't suck. And I was able to then use that to get into, as part of my application for USC. But all along that while, I was talking with the director, I was still visiting classes, I was still visiting their scoring sessions, so they knew who I was. Now, here's the other thing, Mike, before we go on. There are, in the history of the program, there are probably 5 black people that have gone through the program.
Wow. Before
that, I knew of 2 other black people before me, and there are 2 other after me.
Wow.
So, going into the space, it wasn't a space where you saw people that looked like you. But I had to make sure that I showed up professional, full of life, joy, and ready to do this thing and say, hey, if you take a chance on me, you're not going to regret it.
I love that. What I'm listening to now is the value of, so now we talked about faith, we've talked about the art of the pivot, but now we also too are talking about like interning, the importance of interning. And I think where we are right now is a theme of continual education, right? Like, and investing in self and being a constant student about what you want to do. I've heard you now say private lessons a few times, one when you're a kid with your mom, but then even as an adult, you're interning, you decide to take lessons again to get better in order to submit your application. I think far too often we don't invest in ourselves to get better with the knowledge that we need in order to get the next space that we want in life.
I think my wife is sick of me investing in myself.
Yeah.
Because, USC wasn't cheap.
Of course not.
And that was an investment. That I did.
Is that where you met Stephen?
That's where I met Stephen Cable Jr.
At USC.
At USC. I scored his first short film there.
And that's how it happened.
And that's where we met.
Jumped to Creed 2.
Well, actually,
The Land, was it?
Even before that.
Oh my God!
It was a film called A Different Tree that won the HBO short film competition at the American Black Film Festival in Miami, and that is what kind of set his career off, because that short went on HBO, and then from there he was able to leverage that into finding a manager, and then from there, we did The Land of Misfits, which was a short for The Land, proof of concept for that. Yeah. And that was cool because it was basically all just visuals and music.
But then, wow. What a beautiful way of because I have to stop the conversation at some point. That means you have to come on as we talk about the construction of music. But what a beautiful way to really sum up a beautiful life where the private lessons, betting on self, interning, investing in self and education, continual education, seeking knowledge, advancing yourself, challenging yourself. But then there's something else you talked about where you talked about everywhere someone else went, they pulled you along.
Yes.
Right? And now because you were of good spirit, you were decent. You're not perfect. No one's perfect. This is the value of just being decent, right? And showing up and being ready to go, because eventually you'll get placed into USC. Thank God you got rejected for NYU. That wasn't your place.
It wasn't.
Sometimes God removes options in order for you to focus on the real option where you're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Because in the theme of pulling you along, you start scoring, and then here we are. Fast forward, Creed 2, and then here we are now with Transformers.
You're absolutely right.
This is a life really well lived for how we got to this moment. And I say well lived, meaning just the investments on self and all the things I just outlined, audience.
No, you're absolutely.
I think these are the big takeaways.
Well, but it never stops because it never stops. Because look, Stephen put my name in the hat for being the composer for Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. The studio never heard of me. I haven't done a big studio picture at that point. So my agent and I, we conspired that we need to knock the studio's hat off when they actually hear my music. And at that point, I didn't have anything that was representative of what Transformers should sound like. I had the opportunities. I'd worked on documentaries, I worked on TV series, a video game here or there, but nothing like at the level of Transformers. I knew I could do it, but I just hadn't done it yet. So my agent said, okay, what you need to do is you have to write 10 minutes of Transformers level music. Get it recorded in LA with LA's musicians. Hire a videographer to show up, videotape the whole thing. Then you're going to hire an editor to edit that footage, your music, and footage from past Transformers movies with your voiceover into a sizzle reel we'll send to the studio. And we need to do that in 2 weeks. That's probably going to cost you $20,000.
Again, betting on self and investing in self.
Betting and investing on self.
That's a theme. I was talking about that earlier today. Sometimes I was like, Mike, sometimes you have to spend money to make money.
That is very true. It is very true. But it's scary.
It's very scary.
It's scary because, at the end of the day, it's our investment in ourselves as opposed to someone else investing in us.
Yeah.
Right? Which we have control over, but still it's like our resources. So
and it's all about when you want something bad enough.
Yeah, true.
And to put your best foot forward.
That is correct. But this time, talking about partnership, because, my wife and I, we stayed together. We've married 25 years now. We have 2 grown boys, 19 and 23, kind of grown. And I went to my wife and said, hey, honey, we have to do this. Can we do this? I know we have a little money saved away for a house, but can we use some of that to make this happen? And she said, okay, is there any other way? I said, I don't see it. Let's pray on it. We did. And she said, okay, let's do it.
Wow. $170 million later, buddy. The investment paid off. JB, man, I'm so happy you came today.
Well, I'm happy you can make it happen.
Literally just saying, I didn't know what I was going to talk to you about. But
I didn't
think it was about music. Literally, when you walked, I was like, before you walked, I said, I don't think it's about music today. I didn't know what it was. I was like, for some reason, I don't think it's about the music. Right. And sure enough, it wasn't.
No.
Thank you for your gift, man. Thank you for your gift of artistry. And thank you for being vulnerable and telling the story in a way that you was not expecting to tell or to share.
No, I thought we were going to talk about music.
I did too. I didn't know what we're going to talk about. let me just say that, bro. I'm so proud of you. I can't wait for Transformers 2 because clearly,
right.
The way you guys crushed this.
Thank you.
Part 2 of the sequel. I don't even know what Transformer number we're on, but whatever the next iteration of
this new continuum. Yes, agreed.
Is going to be.
No, we're just over the moon with the fact that the movie's being so well received. Audiences are enjoying it. It's doing what it needs to do in the box office, and it's got brown people as the leads.
Yeah,
you've got brown people behind the scenes, and when we basically have all this diversity around us, we can make something really great.
Man, and enjoyable.
It
makes you move in your seat.
That's right, and heartfelt. And people can see themselves in it. Everybody, no matter what you look like, you can see yourself in this movie.
You can.
And I know that Steven worked really hard to do that, so I'm so happy that that's what happened.
I love it. JB, you got to come back next time, man.
All right, man. Don't worry. New York's my home, so
I love it.
I'll hit you up.
All right, audience, until next time.
All right, thank you.